When I say those words out loud, people think I'm exaggerating. They think I must be twisting things for drama, or maybe I misheard her, misunderstood her. But I didn't. Isoitiwifi mais. I heard her proudly tell my husband that she was expecting, as though bringing another child into the world at 63 was something that could erase me from his life. I still remember that moment like a bad dream stitched too tightly to wake up from. The afternoon light, yellow and ave, coming through the curtains. The smell of turmeric and old soap lingering in the kitchen. The sound of her voice sweet, deliberate, full of manipulation dressed as love. And my husband sitting there, frozen, as if he had lost his words. But before that day, before everything unraveled, we were just a normal couple, or at least, that's what I believed. Asterisco asterisco asterisco. I used to think my marriage was steady. Not perfect, but steady. Arjun and I had been married for 5 years. We lived in a quiet neighborhood just outside Pune. He worked as an accountant at a construction firm, and I taught music part-time at a local school. Our evenings were small and predictable. 2 cups of tea, a shared playlist, and sometimes, silence that felt like peace. His mother, Leela, lived just 10 minutes away. She had been widowed for a decade, and everyone said she was lucky. Her son never moved far, always available, always devoted. I admired that about him once. Leela wasn't cruel when we first met, but she carried her authority like a crown. She liked things her way, her recipes, her timing, her opinions. In the first few years, I mistook her controlling nature for concern. She would say things like, "I only want what's best for my Arjun," or, "You should understand him, Beta, better than anyone." But those words started to sound like checkpoints I was supposed to pass, not advice. Then came the years when she began to visit every other day. She'd arrive unannounced with a tiffin box, insisting we eat her cooking because mine must taste too mild for his palate. She'd rearrange the couch cushions, switch out my curtains for the ones she thought matched the season better, lecture me on how I kept his shirts folded. And if Arjun came home late, tired and irritable, she always found a way to plant a seed of guilt in him. Asterisk, "You've become so busy, Beta. You forget your mother sits alone." Asterisco. Sometimes, when she hugged him good night, she'd look at me over his shoulder. That smile, half victory, half warning, used to keep me awake long after the lights went out. Asterisco asterisco asterisco. The first sign of change came 6 months after our 5th anniversary. Arjun started spending more time at her house, first on weekends, then evenings too. He said she wasn't keeping well, blood pressure issues, minor chest pains, insomnia. I believed him. I even cooked her meals and sent them with him. But something in his tone began to shift, a tiredness when I asked simple things, like whether he wanted dinner at home or there. Then, one night, I found his phone buzzing on the table while he was in the shower. A message flash caught my eye. It was from Ma. It read, "Tomorrow I'll tell her everything." For a moment, my breath stopped. Asterisco tell who everything, asterisco foto. The text didn't make sense, but the pit in my stomach told me I wasn't going to like the answer. That night, when I asked him casually what was wrong with her, he smiled faintly and said, "She's been going through hormonal changes, you know. She feels different lately." The way he said hormonal made something in me twitch. How could someone in her 60s talk about hormones unless? I dropped my spoon. "What kind of changes?" I asked. "Reshuged. Let's talk later." But he didn't. He avoided my eyes that whole week. Asterisco asterisco asterisco. A few days later, Leela invited me over for lunch. It had been months since she'd done that. I went, hoping maybe we could clear the air. The house smelled of incense and something unfamiliar, like antiseptic mixed with ginger. When I stepped in, she was sitting on the sofa, her sari neatly pleated, her hair tied tighter than usual. Before I could greet her, she said, "Thank you for coming, Beta. Sit. I have some news." Her tone was rehearsed, calm, calculated. Then she placed her hand over her stomach, her lips trembling, eyes glistening in manufactured tears. "I'm pregnant. I'll get that fast." It was a reflex, a small, nervous chuckle that came out wrong. But when I saw she wasn't laughing, I froze. Her voice caught, quivering just enough to sound real. "It's a miracle. The doctor confirmed it last week." For a moment, my brain refused to compute the sentence. She was 63. A widow. What sort of cruel prank was this? I remember standing there, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. You must be mistaken. That's not possible. She cut me off. Don't you asterisco dar asterisco do ta mother's blessing. God has given me a chance to give life again. Arjun knows everything. He felt the flores slide away beneath me. Arjun knew. When I returned home, he was there, standing in the kitchen, his hands trembling over a cup of tea. The silence between us was louder than anything I'd ever heard. Finally, he said softly, "She told you." "Tell me it isn't true," I whispered. He rubbed his forehead, looking exhausted. "She showed me reports. Medical tests. I don't know what to think." I waited for him to laugh, to call it ridiculous. But he didn't. That night, he slept facing away from me. I cried quietly into my pillow, tasting salt and disbelief. Asterisco, asterisco, asterisco. In the following weeks, her pregnancy became the only thing he talked about. He went to her appointments. He brought her soup, vitamins. She started sending me messages, odd ones, like, asterisk, some women can't give life, but others are chosen by fate. Asterisco. I stopped replying. My friends called me paranoid when I told them. "Ignore her," they said. "She's just trying to get attention." But something deeper told me this wasn't just loneliness. It was strategy. Because ela wanted something. And she was willing to fake a miracle to get it. Asterisco, asterisco, asterisco. The days that followed felt like living inside a fog of disbelief. Every morning I woke up expecting to find that it had all been a bad dream, that I would get a call saying she'd confessed, that the hospital had made a mistake, something. But instead, Arjun grew more distant, and she grew bolder. She started posting subtle quotes on her WhatsApp status, things like, "Miracles happen when faith is pure," and asterisk, "A mother's love knows no age." Asterisk, every post felt like a jab straight into my chest. It wasn't just delusion. It was performance. A week later, Arjun brought her to our home for dinner. He said she wasn't feeling well and shouldn't be alone. I forced a smile, cleared the table space, and tried to keep my shaking hands steady as I served her soup. "Beta," she said softly, "don't feel threatened. This baby won't replace you." I stopped breathing for a second. My throat burned. Arjun didn't say a word. Later that night, I confronted him. "Do you really believe this? Do you believe your mother can be pregnant?" He sighed like a man exhausted by logic. "She showed me the reports, Anya. I can't call her a liar without proof. She says the doctor confirmed." "Which doctor?" My voice finally rose. "Arjun, she's 63 years old." He turned away, his jaw tight. "Maybe this isn't just about biology. Maybe it's a sign. Something divine." That's when I realized I wasn't just fighting a lie. I was fighting a blindness born of devotion. Days turned into weeks. She moved into our guest room, temporarily. Her meals had to be freshly made, her naps uninterrupted. Arjun followed her instructions as though she were royalty. He'd massage her feet every evening, set an extra pillow behind her back, even dim the lights so she could rest. Meanwhile, our marriage started to rot beneath the surface. Every time I asked to talk, he'd deflect, "Later, maybe this weekend. Mar isn't feeling well today." I began to feel invisible in my own home. One evening, while cleaning the guest room, I found an envelope tucked under her pillow. Inside were old hospital forms, but the dates didn't match. They were from 5 years ago, from when she'd been treated for gallstones. The doctor's sign-off hadn't even been updated. Yet somehow, she was using them to back her miracle. My hands shook as I held the paper. The edges were greasy, worn from being handled too often. I realized in that moment, she'd rehearsed this plan. She'd built it piece by piece, waiting for the day when fear of being alone, would justify her cruelty. The next morning, I drove to the hospital listed on the paper. It was a small maternity clinic. The doctor, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, looked confused when I showed her the form. "This is my mother-in-law," I said cautiously. "She claims you confirmed her pregnancy." The doctor frowned. Pregnancy. Ma'am, this patient was treated years ago. Gallstones and mild hypertension. No pregnancy test. Nothing of that sort. My hands went cold. Could someone have altered the paperwork? She sighed. We've seen cases where people misuse old records. I'm sorry. She handed me a stamped note confirming that no recent consultation existed. I drove back trembling, partly from anger, partly from relief. The truth was on my side. But deep inside, I feared it wouldn't matter. Because Leela didn't need truth to win. She just needed control over Arjun's heart. That evening, I hid the doctor's note in my handbag and prepared dinner as usual. She came into the kitchen, humming a devotional song. I forced myself to stay calm. How are you feeling today? I asked quietly. She smiled. Blessed. The baby kicked today. My breath caught. The audacity of it. Interesting, I said evenly. Because I visited the hospital you claimed confirmed it. For the first time since all this began, I saw her mask crack, just a flicker in her eyes. But within seconds, she regained her poise. You shouldn't snoop, Beta. You never believed in me. And you never cared about what this is doing to us, I replied. Her tone sharpened. Us? You think this is about you and him? I raised Arjun. I held him when he had fevers. I stayed hungry so he could sleep. You think a marriage erases that bond? Her words hit like stones. I wanted to scream back, but I didn't. I simply said, love doesn't have to destroy someone else. She looked away, as if that sentence had stung. That night, before bed, I placed the doctor's note on Arjun's pillow. No confrontación, no shouting. Just the folded truth, sitting there between us like quiet thunder. When he read it, his face drained of color. You went there, he whispered. Yes, I said. Because I needed to know if this madness was real. He stared at the paper for a long time, his throat moving as though he couldn't swallow. Then he whispered, I don't know what to believe anymore. You don't have to believe me, I said. Just believe logic. For the first time in months, he didn't argue. He stayed silent. But when I woke up the next morning, both he and his mother were gone. I waited all day. By nightfall, my chest ached with dread. When he finally came home, he looked different, pale, remorseful, and oddly quiet. She fainted, he said. I took her to another clinic. They ran scans. She insisted they saw something. And I whispered. They didn't, he said hoarsely. They told her it's impossible. She's been referred to a psychiatrist. My heart broke, not from pity, but from exhaustion. What did she say? He sank into the sofa. She said I betrayed her. She said I wanted her gone. And then she cried. For 2 weeks, she refused to speak to me. She moved back to her own house but kept sending guilt-laced messages. Asterisk, a true son never doubts his mother. Asterisk. Arjun tried to check on her every day, until I finally told him, you can love her, Arjun, but don't let her hate destroy us. He didn't respond. But his eyes softened, maybe for the first time in months. Something was shifting. But I knew this wasn't the end. Because women like Leela don't let go of control easily. They reinvent the lie. And I could feel another storm brewing. Life after that revelation was quiet, too quiet, the kind that hums with unspoken tension. Arjun became a shell of himself. He went to work, came home, ate in silence, and scrolled endlessly through his phone like he was searching for a version of life that didn't exist anymore. Leela's house, on the other hand, turned into a theater of self-pity. Every few days, she'd call Arjun crying, coughing dramatically into the receiver, or leave voice notes about her loneliness. My own son thinks I'm mad, she'd moan, her tone dripping with wounded pride. I wanted to be angry. Instead, all I felt was this hollow sympathy, the kind that comes when someone's pain becomes their weapon. For a brief while, I convinced myself the worst was behind us. That once the illusion shattered, we could build something again, something real. But I underestimated just how far she would go to reclaim her place in his heart. Asterisco, asterisco, asterisco. One Thursday evening, I came home early from school. The house was unusually dim. Arjun's car was parked outside, but the main door was half open. Inside, the sound of muffled conversation floated down the hall, his voice and hers. She was back. When I walked into the living room, she sat on the couch, pale yet somehow radiant, wrapped in a shawl as if her fragility demanded worship. Arjun stood near the window, arms crossed, conflict all over his face. "What is she doing here?" I asked, trying to stay calm. He glanced at her before answering. "She called me crying. She said she's been hallucinating. Her doctor said she needs support." Leela turned toward me, clutching her chest. "Beta, I didn't mean to burden you." "Batife stay alone, I'll die off sorro." Her tone was a performance, guilt disguised as grace. Before I could respond, she reached into her bag and placed a small frame on the table. Inside was a fuzzy printout, an ultrasound image. Arjun froze. I stared. She whispered, "De miracle came back." The room spun. I walked closer, my voice trembling. "Where did you get this?" She didn't look at me. The new clinic confirmed it. I didn't want to tell anyone until I was sure. Arjun looked torn between logic and loyalty. "Ma, this isn't possible. You were told." "The doctors don't know everything," she snapped suddenly, the softness evaporating. "God decides life, not them." It wasn't just madness now. It was obsession. That night, I barely slept. I lay beside Arjun, staring at the ceiling, feeling the air between us turning colder every minute. When I closed my eyes, all I could see was that printout, proof of nothing, yet powerful enough to shake everything. The next morning, I decided something had to change. I couldn't keep drowning quietly in someone else's delusion. I called my colleague, Neha, whose husband was a radiologist at another clinic. I explained everything, the fake pregnancy, the emotional manipulation, and without hesitation, she asked me to send her a photo of the ultrasound. 2 hours later, she replied, "Anya, this isn't new. The image has been circulating online for years, a stock clinic photo used for training demos. Anyone can download it." My knees gave out. She hadn't even created a new lie, she'd borrowed one. It was then I realized, she wasn't just desperate. She was dangerous. That weekend, I decided to confront her one last time. But this time, I wasn't going alone. I asked Arjun to meet me at her house. When we arrived, she greeted us with forced warmth. There were incense sticks burning, slow serad music playing in the background, the kind of setting she used to create guilt-shaped comfort. I looked straight at her. "I need to talk, Ma." She smiled faintly. "About my baby?" "No," I said quietly. "About the truth." I placed the printed email on her table, the evidence showing that her ultrasound was fake. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then she lowered her eyes and whispered, "You think you've won." "This isn't about winning," I said softly. "It's about honesty." Suddenly, she laughed, not loud, not manic, but broken. "Do you know what it feels like to live alone for years? To cook for one, to talk to walls, to hear no footsteps in the hall? You took my son. You took my reason." Arjun's expression darkened with guilt. "Ma, that isn't fair," he murmured. "I never." She cut him off sharply. "You think a mother stops needing her child because he has a wife?" It was a question no one could answer. Her eyes filled with tears. "I only wanted him to come home, to remember me." The room went silent except for the low hum of the fan. I realized then that her cruelty came from fear, not hatred, fear of fading, fear of being unloved. But that fear had poisoned all of us. "Ma," I said gently, "you don't need to lose him to keep him. But you can't destroy everything around him either. If you love him, let him breathe." For a moment, her expression softened, just a flicker of reason. But then she turned away. "Leave," she whispered. "Both of you." We walked out to the car in silence. Arjun's hands gripped the steering wheel, motionless. Finally, he said, "I think she needs help." I nodded, my eyes on the road. "And so do we." That night, he called a therapist, something neither of us had done before. For the first time in months, we talked, really talked, about how easily guilt can turn love into control. How his duty became a weapon that isolated both of us. And how neither of us had noticed when love turned into fear. He cried for a long time that night. So did I. But at least, for once, the tears weren't hiding lies. They were shedding them. Over the next few weeks, Leela began therapy. Slowly, her calls reduced. Then one day, she forgot to call at all. The following week, she sent me a message, just one line. Asterisk, maybe God was never giving me a baby. Maybe he was giving me a chance to start over. Asterisk. It wasn't an apology, but it was something close to peace. I stared at the text for a long time before replying. Asterisk, then take it, Ma. Please, take it. Asterisk. Still, sometimes when I walk past our guest room, I remember her sitting there, cradling her fake reports, whispering lullabies to a dream that never existed. And I wonder, how many people live their whole lives like that, clinging to illusions just to feel loved?